The common right shoulder, though, is if it's your ball, you want right shoulder, because if you're going to run a New Zealand, or sorry, number 8 pickup, you want your tight head to get maybe a yard push on their loose head and just skew the scrum a little bit, which puts their loose forward and number 8 in a worse defensive position when you pick the ball up and you're going.
How does that happen legally?
Your loose head doesn't go and your tight head pushes. You're not talking very much.
About how much are you looking for?
Maybe 15 degrees, maybe a yard.
Yeah, so like one.
Nothing.
Two steps.
Nothing. You're trying to get that loose forward who's bound here to have to be bound over here, which gives your number 8 over here the shot to make it past it. Because that's all you're trying to do, is you're trying to get the number 8 past their loose forward or the number 8.
So you're in a legal situation. You're talking about your loose head not pushing as much, correct?
Trying to stay.
Trying to stay, whereas your tight head is driving. Now, from an illegal tactic, how does that occur to get that right shoulder?
It's illegal if the loose head retreats.
What's that?
If the loose head will retreat
Okay.
in order to achieve that right shoulder.
So you're applying pressure. Yeah. If you're applying enough pressure together, and it starts with your engagement, so you've got a little bit of an angle to start. So you start with a little bit of a strong right shoulder. That you'll at least have a chance to either maintain that little bit of a right shoulder, or even more of a push to get that angle Johnny's talking about, to put that flank in the disadvantage. The number 8 has the advantage to break off and get clear of that loose forward on that side.
I don't think there's any illegal stuff unless the loose head's fully pulling it.
But again, we're talking about tactics that as referees we've seen. One of the tactics that will occur is, again, in a pre-setup, having the defending loose head, okay, the defending loose head take away the line up head on with the prop, the tight head, and somebody's going to budge. Well, what ends up happening is typically the tight head will go in, and once he goes in, theoretically he's been beaten already because his momentum's not going forward, it's going inward, whereas the defending loose head at that point now has free reign because the tight head has already got his props exposed. He's got his ribs exposed.
Plus, you probably wouldn't run to the right because you wouldn't have gotten right shoulder.
Correct.
And that loose forward would have been right in our number 8's face.
So tactically, where would, and again, we're trying to give, we want to give referees the tools to recognize what is going to happen or anticipate what's going to happen. So in those situations where you would want a right shoulder from an offensive tactic, okay, defensively, where would you see a team try to line up head on head with that tight head to force him to the inside to counter that?
Where their tight head would line up on our loose
Yeah.
head.
So let's assume that you have. Where would you want to run an 8-man pick? To where you'd want to get that hooker, that flanker changed a bit, his angle.
Space on the right side.
So space. So you've got more than 15 meters on that right side. So it's towards that right side. So it's still considered the short side, but you've got space to run.
Or why are you looking at the tactics side of it, right? Because then you're trying to predetermine what you think the scrum might be doing.
The referees have to anticipate. Okay. And first thing that is required is that we need to know who's winning that scrum engagement.
Yeah.
We need to recognize that, because first off we need to know who's being put under pressure, and then the next question is who's being put under pressure legally and who's being put under pressure illegally. So when a team is losing at the scrum and they know that a right shoulder, they know that an 8-man pick may come, they may defensively put that loose head in a position where he's forcing that tight head to go in. So he's going to increase his gap a bit or to decrease the gap to force that tight head to go in. And as
You want to think it
yeah.
out.
So let me so Marquise just walked in. Let me just show you. Let's start off here. We're not, all of a sudden we're ahead of ourselves here because you're talking tactics. Right? We're talking about setup.
Okay, fair enough.
Just to understand setup, exactly how we want to play, so.
Sorry, and when you talk about increasing or decreasing the gap, is that the gap between the two teams, or the gap between the loose head and the hooker?
Loose head hooker.
Okay.
And then just a point of other footage, right? You had asked me about some footage, and I wasn't sure how to
Right.
put stuff together, but let's just say, right, for, granted, I've never engaged in any of this before. So this is our, it's one of our first scrums of the day yesterday. Right, so anything with Johnny on the setup? That be just, we just slip?
From my perspective?
Oh, sure, Patrice, yeah.
So on that first, that's a slippage on the opposite side with the 9 is putting in. And you can see how the loose head, St. Mary's loose head, simply just slips. You can see his left foot is angled, and even Cal Poly's tight head
Oh,
angled.
his right foot, yeah, okay.
His right foot, his left foot, they literally slipping right underneath them.
Right.
So it's not an issue of arms bringing down the scrum at all. It's just an issue of slippage.
Right.
And I switched sides over here because that side went down first. Just to make sure they're a little bit closer so that there's more weight underneath their feet, so they won't slip on this next scrum. I
Okay.
think, I don't know.
And it's pretty early in the game, right? It's pretty early in the game, so
Yeah.
we slip, guys go down, so we're just looking at the setup, right? No tactics involved here, right? There's no tactics in Cal Poly other than win this ball and try to push it out. All right, so you're here, you're on the loose head side. He's down,
He overextends and he loses his footing.
overextends, he's down. Penalty against St. Mary's, not that I'm. But, so with the setup for where we are, we're not, all we want, we just want to be neutral. That's it. So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
In terms of
And shifted his weight.
Does St. Mary's lose it?
St. Mary's loose head. So look at his angle right now. He's definitely not square. He's definitely coming in. He's aiming towards the sideline almost when he does put that pressure on. And that's what that penalty was for.
I see that as pre-engagement that he's already, that the scrum is not.
So this goes to my question of setup. So can we rewind that to bring it?
I'm just,
Yeah.
setup, it's setup intent tactics.
No, and that's fine. So let's look at setup and look at the spacing at the setup between the two props before the engage. Okay, a little bit further. All right, so let's just go through this and see if the gaps are set correctly.
You talk about the gaps.
I'm talking about, okay, so I'm talking about every prop, everybody in the front row should have a gap to hit, correct? And that's what the referees want to create, is that space. My question is, where the loose head is lining up, is he head on head with the tight head for white? Because, and it...
I think it's the camera angle.
No,
I don't think he is.
yeah. So in that case,
Comes straight ahead.
in that case, he's coming straight ahead. So does anybody have any issues with the gaps between, does everybody have a gap to put their head in? Yeah.
Hey, Paul,
Yeah.
interrupt real quick. We were in Provo last weekend. The referee of the B-side game, his pre-match instructions for the front row was on crouch. He has the front rows to point ear to ear, so they have a straight line between all of their ears. I think that would help with the gap that you're looking for.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
Is that something that,
Just good communication.
I mean, that was his, his instruction before the match, that in order to assure that gap, on crouch, it'll come down, all the ears are all lined.
Yeah,
And
and-
that there pretty much settles.
Correct. And too often times we don't, as referees, manage that well enough. and it should be part of your pregame discussion. It should be part of the referee's pregame discussion. And frankly, before the very first engagement of the scrum, you know, we reiterate that issue of at the pregame we agreed that everybody would have a gap to go into. Make sure before you hit that you have a gap. And that rectifies it. So at the next time when there's no gap to go into and you see a tight head going in early because he doesn't have that gap, it's a free kick.
You give him a warning first.
No, why should I? I've given, I mean, my question is, why should I, when we've already agreed at the pregame that this would be the case? Prior to the first scrum engagement, at least this is my operation, I talk about the gaps beforehand. At the very first scrum, I said,
I need to pull up my Brett's file.
as agreed upon, we said that we would set in the gaps. Okay, so at the very first scrum, when I see a tight head coming in early,
Well, first strike, you're done.
What happens if it doesn't affect the scrum at all?
then that's something that we can manage at the next
You can
scrum.
talk to 'em,
Absolutely.
they come up,
Yeah,
scrum,
it's really a question about materiality at that point. Sometimes it's just bad technique.
Sure.
Yeah, it could be just a human error, mistake.
But for gaps, like Mark said, the guy at BYU, I mean, he hit it,
Yeah.
he hit the nail with a hammer and bam. If your ears aren't lined up and you can't see through it, something's off on your gap.
Sure.
You guys should be able, not you guys as the referees, but the front row should be able to fix it on their own. Or it goes into your hands and
Correct.
you'll fix it.
Yep.
And that instruction came down, I think, in USA Rugby, the whole
Yeah.
years in the line thing, the last time the engagement was changed.
Correct.
And maybe we've just gotten a little bit loose on it as the years have gone by.
Your head, you're a prop, you're gonna forward your momentum down forward.
Starts to come down there, sees inside shoulder, comes down, and then that's where it slips.
Is that entirely the fault of the tight head, though? I mean, hard to tell from the camera angle. It's hard to tell from the referee's perspective, I think. Field conditions may have played a part. I mean, it could have been 3 or 4 factors that caused that. And, you know,
And I think
we
the
don't want
ref
it to
did the
go.
right thing. I think he did the right thing, he moved to the other side.
Yeah.
And then on this side, then on the next one, the Cal Poly had that tight head problem. He doesn't have his feet set, and then when he goes, he slips right off the bat and drops down to his knee.
Well, the larger point is, we want to scrum properly and effectively. We're not looking to create penalties. And I think sometimes we feel that that's not part of the overall view come scrum time.
Would you agree, though, on this first scrum that the St. Mary's tight head is in a poor position?
Right there?
Not here. Not there.
Okay.
At the beginning, yes.
Pete, were you?
We've been working on his hip
Right
lower.
there. So I think that's what we're talking about.
Pete, would you agree that you're in a poor position?
That's not Pete.
Sorry.
Pete's on the far side.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a tight.
No, Pete's a tight head. Pete.
Hey, but Pete's, how tall are you, Pete? 6'3"?
Yeah.
So no, he's
when he comes in, he's got to adjust. He's one of the guys that has to adjust, just because he's got a long body, big legs.
Yeah.
He's going to get your shorter guy.
Look,
Yeah, but his shoulders are lower.
look at it just where it is right there.
Which person?
Look at his face of that prop.
Which-
You can
are we
see
talking
his,
about
you
the
can
St.
see his
Mary's
face
tight
right
head?
there, his head is not up.
We're not talking about the loose head. We're talking about the St. Mary's tight head.
Still, the loose head is dropping his head, which is eventually gonna cause the scrum to drop rather than go forward.
For the loose end?
Yeah,
I,
and as the first goes, he drops his head more and more.
so it's part of the positioning that once you engage, you've got to then get your head into a position to be comfortable. So the initial engagement doesn't always, is not the final result of how his head ends up.
His head continues to drop is what I'm pointing out. His head continues to go down.
But hey, back to the tight head side.
And that's
Hang on. We're losing focus here.
Let's ask, hey, this is the perfect opportunity, right?
Yeah.
We're all talking about why we think the tight head went down. Well, he's right fucking here.
Yeah.
So let's hear his perspective on the sequence that led to it.
So yeah, basically, and this is the first scrum of the game. I knew that it was wet, so I knew that if I overextend, I'm going to slip. So my feet are a little bit closer, and And then when we come in on bind, my hips are a little bit above my shoulders, but before we go into the initial hit, my hips are level. So maybe I don't think that was like a cause for bringing the scrum down. Like,
What was the cause for bringing it down?
How did you feel in that scrum when it went down? What was going through your body at that time?
I just felt like there was a slip on both sides just because of the field.
Okay.
You felt like
so,
your feet
so wet.
Yeah. Just a precursor is it was raining all game.
No, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't look like it
The
was.
sun just came out at that moment.
So,
You want to talk about the hail too?
so as a prop, did you feel that the space between between the two scrums was too far away initially?
I mean, that was the first scrum of the game. I don't really remember it very well, but I didn't think that there was nothing stood out that it was a bad setup.
So this is the first scrum that goes down, and then this is the first scrum of the game, the first one that goes down. Did you, Marquise, did you do anything to adjust other than going to the other side?
When I went to the other side, I just made sure that their binds were correct, and then that it wasn't an issue of anyone bringing down the scrum. And then the next one that goes down, I'm like, okay, something is definitely up. However, Tim, you can correct me on this. How many penalties for scrums in the average game? Probably like 2. There weren't that many. And it was like a high success rate of scrums this game.
It just happened that this was.
So this is the
All one video.
We're not here to talk about the good ones.
Okay. But the corrections I made were just the visual cues on anyone bringing intentionally doing anything to the scrum.
And I agree, he vocalized that really well, because he just wanted to make sure that I wasn't bringing the scrum down with my bind, and that the loose head wasn't doing anything illegally.
And to be honest with even the coaches, I mean, there's been a push developmentally for referees to look at, to change the way we think about penalties, okay? And the shift has come over the period of about the last 4 or 5 years when we look for opportunities to shape behavior, okay? And really that's what it is. That's why as referee coaches we insist on not playing advantage early on, because advantage doesn't shape behavior. Our perfect situation would be that you get all of those stupid things out of the way to shape the behavior so that later on in the game you're not having penalties, because an earlier penalty earlier in the game will be more impactful to the rest of the game than 5 penalties in the last 20 minutes of the game. So our goal is to shape behavior. Now, it sounds like, Marquise, this was the first penalty awarded, and it doesn't sound like there were many penalties after. So in terms of shaping behavior, I think that job well done, because you did shape behavior. The end result was you didn't have penalties through the course of the game. You didn't have to sin bin players as a consequence of not shaping that behavior. So from a referee perspective, yes, we would hope that this gets out of the way sooner. And you're saying we don't want to talk about the good ones.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but we absolutely want to. We want to find the good one. We want to. Yeah.
Paul, he's a bat.
We want to find the good ones and emulate the good ones through the course of the game.
But I think for the purpose of today, right, when the discussion starts, it was about setup.
Correct.
Right? It's about the setup. What do we teach? How do we teach it? Who do we teach it to? Et cetera.
Right.
And about being positive coaches, right? And trying to make the game flow to a certain extent.
Yep.
So I would say, in the setup here earlier, like we look at Peyton's head or Loosehead's head, and it's down, it's looking down. These kids, they find a way, right? The young ball players, they find a way to sort it out amongst themselves in the front row. Is that right? Yeah. Ethan? Right? And his head could be down, he could, as Mark said, come in a disadvantageous position. He finds a way to sort that out. And that's pretty obvious when their feet slip out. And maybe that's not the best of examples, to start here. But it's just setup and how do you teach. And from a referee, from a match management standpoint, it's easier for you to manage if you understand exactly the root of whatever both programs are teaching. There are guys that teach destructive practices, right? And then for intent, it's always where's the scrum, field position, time and tape, and the whole kit and caboodle. There's a lot more to it, but you have to start at the very basics here for broad body profile.
So we heard from Ethan, and you're calling out some commands in there at the beginning. Is anybody else talking in that pack? Is the Scrum half saying anything?
Besides like our tactical, what we want to do as a team after the Scrum, no one's talking really. Just me, and then as soon as we are in the setup, then the flanker on the side of with the non putting the ball in, then he has a cadence after we're set. He takes a cadence for when we're going to 8-man shove together when the ball is put in.
And on our ball, we're trying to be steady as we can. We don't want to move. We want to have good exchange between our 8 and our 9, and we just want to play rugby, unless we're going for a pushover try or something, But usually, you see us, we don't try to shove a team 5 yards and then spin the ball. We'll just be solid as a rock.
But it's just, and again, it comes also from penalties. So when this started for us, I think it was Steve Finarelli did one of our games with Glendale. I've got some fun with that if you want to see it. And we had some questions to Steve that we had a really nice conversation about, just, what he saw, what we saw, et cetera. And again, it just goes back to your setup, and then intent is huge.
Yeah.
So, and films help a lot. And if maybe there's ways for referee to get, I don't know if everybody cuts up film the way we do, but there's ways to get film specifically on the set piece or whatever.
So
that's part of this is what can we do together here to keep it safe, right? Manage it properly, keep it safe. Let the game flow.
So the referees have access to a program called Advantage, and it's similar to Game Break, where we can code every element, tackle, penalty, whatever, and then see that in sequence through the course of the game.
You're not taking our film, which has been cut, and putting it in Advantage, I believe.
We are taking whatever film we get and coding it. We don't.
Maybe I'm wrong then, but I was told by one of your associates that didn't want to see our film because I take an hour, whatever the duration is, and cut it to 35 minutes.
No, we would prefer.
That's my Saturday night.
Correct. We would prefer to have a full game footage, because in terms of evaluating the game, but we also recognize, the expediency and of the bandwidth that needed to.
Yeah, but I'm just saying from us.
Right.
We're here. We do film on Sunday mornings at 9:30, all the way through. Right. We do film a movement or something. So it's good to know, right? If the guy, if this film is sufficient, then.
Well, so from the film that you've done, I've got film from some games where it's like the highlights of the things that we want to challenge you on from the coach, right? And it's like 8 minutes of film from 80 minutes of rugby, right? And your film's fine, when it's shortened, it's cut, we're not looking at dead ball time, we're not looking at the rest, but the film I've had here is perfectly.
Yeah.
This was 50, like yesterday's game was 53 minutes, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
Perfectly
just cut out
usable.
some
Yeah.
of the shit. I get it, right? You do. There is important, Arizona State, other off-the-ball occurrences that go down. You need to have the camera going. We're trying to figure a way to be better at that, be more productive, for ourselves and also for the referees to help with Advantage. So we are trying to bridge the gap, a little bit. But from our standpoint, I think, like I've never had a ref call and say, "Hey, can you get me this on the film?" Could you, even ask?
Right.
You guys know that we cut the heck out of the films. You ask, and we can say no. Right? If you want something, we certainly do our best. I mean, it helps us learn quite a bit for whatever aspects of the game. I do think, though, getting into this, as I said here, right, we can really nitpick this stuff.
Yeah, and from a referee perspective, we want to see the clear and obvious. That's what we're instructed to penalize, is that clear and obvious stuff. And oftentimes, clear and obvious is different from a senior referee that's on a national panel to a C2 that's seeing everything and penalizing everything. And we anticipate that. We anticipate that younger referees are going to have a higher penalty count. We also expect that our senior referees are able to distinguish what's clear and obvious and material to what is not. Because we all know that a referee can absolutely destroy a game by not creating any flow to it. Because they're penalizing everything. I'm not here to defend the referees. I'm here to develop the referees. And from a coaching perspective, I just abandoned a match yesterday, okay, for safety issues. So I know from a coaching perspective what it feels like when you feel like your players are in jeopardy. And it's a huge responsibility on the referee, but it's also a responsibility on coaches and referees to have that conversation. And I don't think that we have those opportunities enough.
For sure.
No. So why don't we take a break to go down to the field if we're kind of done here, and we'll start working on the setup and stuff, if you're okay with that? Yeah.
No, I just pulled this up. I got pulled up a lot of film. Okay. To show to folks. We weren't really sure what we wanted to do here for film. This was last year, St. Mary's at Cal. I don't know if I say anything about the right arm of the Cal tight end.
Where is this in relation to the field? Is that the 10-meter line?
I would say our tight end,
It looks like
He got the hit.
the Cal guy came through. The only thing is the Cal guy's right arm is shut him down. What I would look like if I were repping and I was on the sides, I would see where the binds are. If they're on the side, if the jersey's being pulled. If the jersey's being pulled, he's trying to pull him down.
Just as a hindsight to that last clip, you understand now that this, with the new laws, that's a penalty against the St. Mary's number 6 for hooking the ball. So the new laws that came into play say that a front row has to hook the ball. You cannot have anybody else hook the ball.
The ball independent speed.
Once it's hooked, did it get hooked though? Was that hooked?
Yeah, you can't actually drive over the ball. You have to actually hook it.
A front row has to hook it.
Yeah.
After that happens.
And now the AD can feed it back to their hands, right?
Yeah.
So it looks like the Cal guy's going in at an angle there.
Look at that angle his head's on. Yeah, that's not safe.
And he loses the bow in his back.
That's not what throws.
But if you're looking here at intent, right? So from the St. Mary's standpoint, where do we want to go here, right? If we can drive them a touch left shoulder, obviously is where we want to be.
So the question, so in this,
We're looking for power.
We're looking for power.
Disrupt the ball presentation at the back.
now you had asked about anticipating what's going to happen, okay? Through the course of this game, so I'm on the sideline and we knew going ahead that this was going to be a huge contest and a huge opportunity for St. Mary's going into this game. So the question is, on the pre-setup, go back to the pre-setup. Do you have anything more?
Different clip.
So, is my question in relation to Phil is this: is the Cal tight head already coming at an angle? And so,
45 degrees.
right, and so everybody can see, and this is the importance from the referee perspective of looking at that. Okay, we know beforehand, at least we should know, that right now, even before the hit, St. Mary's is in a dominant position because that Cal tight head is coming in an angle. My only question is, why is he coming at an angle? Is it because the loose head is taking that space, or is it because of he recognizes that he's got to support his hooker more?
Yes, he wants to put pressure on red too.
Hold on, Paul. Your ball, you don't care what your tight end's doing.
No, correct.
That's the hooker.
Correct.
You're trying to go channel one, at least we go try to do channel one. It's not that you don't care.
But St. Mary's Cal wants stable ball.
Yeah, he probably comes in at an angle because they're trying to run a number 8 coming this way, and that's the only way he can beat our loose head. Just come at an angle.
I don't think they're trying to run a number 8, this is 22.
Yeah,
It looked like it was
We will.
Only that, just because you're, so if you just pass it out, then you're forward right there.
From my standpoint, his angle, they lose that opportunity. He's thinking it's the only way he's going to be able to.
So when does that angle become an infraction?
When would you agree? Okay, so let's go back to this. So I do have an issue with the way that the drive occurs, because all of a sudden we go from going forward to the locks coming around for St. Mary's.
The locks coming around?
Watch.
Really?
Because they're buckling the pressure from the left side.
Look at, so those locks are not driving forward.
Yeah, he is. He's following.
They initially drive forward.
He's following the
front
loose
row.
head.
His first step with his left foot, though, is inside, not backwards.
I think the St. Mary's is shifting because the cow tight head
There's no
has
tight head
angle.
power right there.
The tight head doesn't have the power, correct.
Yeah, Cal's tight head
No pressure,
is
so-
depowering himself.
Correct, agreed with that. There's no, I don't believe there's any contention with that.
The locks are dictated by
The front row.
Right, so our lock is bound in on the
Yep.
butt and thigh of that tight end.
So we have,
Watch when he falls. So we go in, the cow guy comes in, gives his chest up. You're talking about his chest giving up. He's now got his chest. Advantage, St. Mary's loose head, right? He's pushing straight ahead. They sink, they coil, they get the shove, cow goes back.
no disagreement there.
Well, let me ask you this.
So-
What's our loose head supposed to do if the tight head basically is beat? Is he supposed to stop and stay straight, push straight, or is he gonna follow the natural, the path of least resistance, which is that tight head getting beat? He's got no other choice.
I think the initial fraction, the initial setup occurs, and this is where you get fruit of the poisonous tree, so to speak. Okay? So you have in this case you have the cow tight head that's coming in at a poor angle and beating himself. No disagreement there. Everything after that fact comes. So the initial issue is the cow tight head.
So is that an infraction? That's what I'm
No.
trying to figure out.
Does it?
That is a penalty, it wasn't awarded, yes, so he missed that.
Yeah, he missed that.
That's a real penalty, yes.
However, I wouldn't penalize that simply because St. Mary's got the ball, and that's just something that you adjust afterwards.
Right.
But
You didn't beat because of this reason, you need to change your angles because the next scrum will result in the
But
same
you're
way.
disadvantaged.
That's the approach that we prefer.
And it goes. Here's the problem. Here's from a referee perspective, though. It comes down to if I catch the first infraction, yes. But now we have a mitigating factor, and a lot of times the referees, unfortunately, will catch the second issue. So the first issue at hand is the cow tight head coming in at an angle. He depowers himself, so he's beaten himself. The push comes initially forward, but then you see the wheel.
And that's because that's fine.
But referees will catch.
Because the cow side crumpled.
But this
That's
is
the only place they.
agreed. But the end result is a less experienced referee. A less experienced referee is going to penalize the wheel. They're going to see the locks coming around, and they're going to penalize the wheel. Now, a wheel can happen legally, okay? But when you see, from a referee perspective, when you see locks moving sideways instead of forward, that wheel is being generated from either the locks or from the flankers that are.
I think I
Yeah.
agree.
Because the tight head depowered himself.
Yeah.
Correct.
You're going naturally, and that part crumbles, and you're coming forward, it just naturally is gonna move.
Right.
Paul's not saying it's correct to call a penalty. He's saying that inexperienced refs would possibly call a penalty.
But the locks are just following the front row, wherever the front row goes. So if the front row is dominant and they push them in that, what we just saw, the
Yeah.
locks are naturally just gonna follow suit. And so it's the result of being overpowered by the,
But part of this discussion here is.
So if we're talking about referee, so as a coach, okay, I try to take the referee out of the equation as much as possible. Okay, I don't like having conversations about the referee to my players. I teach the law, and I try to teach from a dominant perspective. But when you see when a referee sees, if he doesn't catch that first issue, he's certainly going to see the locks wheeling. He's certainly going to see the locks stepping to the left. That's an easy fit. That's an easy identifier for a referee, because we're taught to teach. We're taught to look at the feet. So when those locks, and I'm telling you from your own perspective that when you beat somebody like that, it needs to come into your vocabulary about forcing those locks to drive forward as opposed to stepping to the left.
How come you're not teaching the referees to follow the front row as well, instead of just focusing on the locks?
You're talking about 15, 20 different actions in a referee, having to look at things, and they're going to miss items.
Another piece of that is you talked about, I mean, you guys are looking at intent, right? And so I think our hope would be that if the scrum is moving, if any team has the scrum moving the direction they want, what would the intent be to then infract, you know? And I think that's the context we're hoping that's seen, is that if we're winning that scrum, why would all of a sudden what would our reasoning be for willing it? Why would we do that on purpose?
Because refs are looking at what is happening in front of them. They don't know that you're winning legally.
It's a question of winning dominantly and legally versus dominantly and illegally.
To look at to see where their feet are going. If that scrum starts wheeling, yeah, we may have missed the tight head on the cow side because we're on the opposite side of the scrum. So what we're saying is that we look for what we can, and just because you're winning doesn't mean we can identify why.
Where did the dominance occur?
What's that?
Didn't dominance occur in the first couple of seconds?
It did,
where we came forward?
It did, and that comes back to my issue of referees ensuring the setup is accurate.
100%.
Yeah.
We can beat this thing to death.
Correct.
For 2 hours.
Correct.
So it just goes back to setup.
Yep.
And intent, and we're always trying to be, a step ahead.
Right.
And doing our best, right? So there are teams that will have very aggressive, tactics that they'll employ here, as a get over here to get right shoulder to try to maybe show the refs that they're being infringed upon by their opponents, however it goes. But we just go back to setup, doing the best we can, and also intent. It just has to do the same with referee being in the pathway of breakdown 9 to 10, right? We get a number of refs that aren't really sure what's happening in the flow of the game, and they're right in the pathway. So, or sometimes we've had to tell refs hey man, we're running.
Right.
We're running laps. Move. And they look at us why do you do that? Well, because we like to do it. We don't need to do what's conventional.
Yeah.
But I will say, I would have to believe that most teams do want to be positive, right? And they want to be positive in the set piece, and we just got to do our best here to teach that and manage it and understand best we can. That's
all right.
That's it, right?
Engage.
Set. Squeeze. Engage.
Showing his age.
Pause.
Touch.
That's pause.
Deliver. All right, now do something illegal and let us guess what it is. Run over the ref.
Make sure the first breath is back.
Okay, so we were just going in. Okay. All right. So you're warming up.
I heard James. I could tell a bunch of high school kids how to do it.
Oh, nice.
Yes, carry with Seconds. Seconds.
Sound better.
Crouch. 60. Bind. Brace. Engage.
Squeeze! Engage. Corned beef.
You got the touch of the pause.
Break.
David, so can you, from a referee perspective, can you talk to the players about what you're looking for?
So primarily what I'm looking for is on the sets, on the crouch heads, on the bind, that your arms or your elbows are turned up. So when you come together, make sure that your elbows remain up and your hips aren't pointing in a specific direction.
So when you say heads aligned, you just want them together. That's all. And it's fine. They try to get closer. So like the comment from the BYU second
referee, second team referee, where you see through their ears.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that all the heads are in their gaps and there's no head on head. And then at the bind that they were long and they were not biting up on the shoulder up here, either back on the back. And that elbow's kind of up so that I can see the downward motion when if it collapses. Who's bringing it down? Well, I mean, he started angling it. Yeah, the cow tight head. Cow tight head's got
So you were starting to angle in, right? Why? So and again, you have to put this in context. Most of the referees have never been in the scrum. Okay, it's foreign to them.
Half of the referees.
So the question is, so did you purposely try go at an angle? So why were you at an angle? Because you ended up at an angle. Sometimes when the pressure comes from the loose head position, it's supposed to get my chest. So when it comes to my chest, my hip stays square, but sometimes it kind of goes like this. Is it important for a referee to know about the chest? Because one of the things that the referees don't talk about is how to tactfully control a player. And I know from my own coaching experience that you want to control the breastplate. The question is, why is that significant? And is there legal and illegal tactics that can be used to get that positioning? And I'll leave it to you guys.
Yes, yes, and yes.
I think
Okay.
the way that the loose head is able to get that position is his bind has to be nice and short so he can squeeze in. And so if you notice, from both players on that last scrum, your arms are relatively shorter. Yours is actually under here. So if it's underneath his jersey and not on top of his back, you easily put yourself in that nice position to manipulate. And so my adjustment for these two, and to make sure that doesn't happen, is to make sure that both my arms stay high on that back. Because if my arm is straight out, there's no way I can try to bore in. I can bore in like this. I cannot bore in right here, and I'm in a weaker position.
Why?
Because what?
Why would you want to be in a weaker position?
Exactly. I want you in a weaker position because if you're in a better, nice, strong position, then you're able to manipulate and take advantage of the situation in which they just.
No. What he's saying is that you've got to make it legal on both sides. So if the opposition prop is reaching with a long bind, your prop has to as well. Otherwise, they've got an illegal advantage.
Why?
I don't know where you're trying to come with a weaker positive advantage.
No, I'm saying you need to have equal opportunity. You can't have one prop binding this short and driving in to get that strength advantage.
That's part of the technique.
But see, here's where we have a conflict, because in the game management guidelines, it clearly states that the loose head's bind needs to be high up on that back area.
But nothing, you just said it, high up on the back. Nothing about long.
Correct.
Nothing about long.
Well,
Okay,
you
but
can't have high on back and
I'm just.
He's got to have a long.
So can you show a difference between what a high on the back bind would look like as opposed to a short bind would look like from a loose head?
To make it high bind right now?
Yeah.
That's what
Okay, so that right there is that high bind that we're talking about, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, Marquise, you have any issues with that on that bind?
I don't have any issues with this one. This one has to be up. This right here manipulates, and this will cause them to drop easily. All that muscle is right here. I will have this bind higher.
Higher
so
up here? Not so much far back, but
not far
high,
back, but higher up here. So it's harder for him to bring the scrum down.
A little harder with a t-shirt. Is that?
Exactly.
So
And
we
then
remove
you
this
can
one
see,
off.
the thing is, you can see this scrum, you can see their hands, and if it does drop, you can see exactly who it is. If that bind is underneath and it's shortened, just shorten it up.
Them up.
Sure, sorry. If that bind is shortened from this side at advantage, you can't see that arm, so you don't know what they're doing exactly.
Right.
And from my management side of things, as long as I can see the arms up, it's almost a guarantee that the scrum's gonna stay up.
Yeah. Now, can you show a scrum where you've created an advantage for yourself by having a short arm bind?
You don't know how to cheat. You don't know how to cheat.
I'm going to show you. Do it on both sides so we both can see. He's got the
Bind
short
all
arm.
the way back.
So where's the short arm?
So the
Tight
tight
head
head
shorter bind.
elbows all the way back.
Elbows are way bent.
Pulling down.
So the issue on this side is if you look at the red bind, the elbow is coming down, it's creating pressure on that, as opposed to going up high. He can't do it. Now, the tight head, the only way he can defeat that is to drop down on that and mess with that a bit. So that's the only way he's going to be able to defeat that. The problem is in your management and your setup, as long as everybody's got that bind, it's not creating that disparity that you're gonna need. So that's that example of that tactic where it bars on that illegal act, because it clearly states in game management guidelines that the binds need to be on the back. Okay, not talking about short or long, but we are talking about on that bind on the back. And too often times, one of the things that a loose head will do when he's getting beat is they'll come down on that bottom of that shirt. And from a loose head perspective, he's got all that weight going down. So again, that's at the hit phase. We're not talking about the setup. There's nothing in the setup that would control that. That's after the fact. But you got to ensure that those binds are correct.
Question.
Yeah.
Going forward, if there's no issues with the competition, but the binds are questionable, but there's no jockeying around.
That's a management issue.
Allow it to go?
Correct. That's a management issue. It's a question of when that tactic starts to bore on or verge on illegal.
When it becomes material.
When it becomes a material act. So, yes, there's going to be a contest. We want that contest to occur. It's a question of when does the contest become unfair. And really, that's from a referee perspective, that's what we're looking at. Does that one simple act of marginal bind create an unfair advantage to the team that's doing it? And that's really what the referees are there to judge. So, okay, so let's go back and we'll have the team in red. So we got the team in red being, sorry, the one team in red. We're gonna have, what's your name, by the way? Batu?
No, Peyton.
Peyton. So Peyton, you're the defensive scrum. Okay. You're the defensive scrum. So on a setup, show what you would do to force that tight head to go inward.
Seconds.
Crouch. Bind. Set. Squeeze. Knees. And hold. Hold. Break.
Yeah, I know.
Let me watch this next one.
So on this next scrum, line up head on head with him to force him to go to the inside, because that's one of the things that we're talking about in terms of pre-setup, where referees have to get it correct, because that one act of you lining up head on head, forcing him to go to the inside, is something that the referees can't control. Okay, so on the next scrum, put your head on head with him to force him to go to the inside. Okay.
Never done it.
Huh?
Never done it.
But no. Okay.
Have them go 3-on-3 and
Okay, so instead of lining up instead of lining up to the left on the defense, so you'll have you line up on the left like you normally do. Instead of you lining up on the left, line up as a hooker, line up head on head with him.
Okay, there you go. Snap positions, and everybody should be lined up on the opposite's head.
Yeah.
That's an obvious fix. It's the right mark. That's like beyond obvious.
Crouch. Okay, so stop right there. Hang on, stop right there. Just go to the crouch and hold. Crouch. So in this position right there, okay, you've got the hookers and the loose head on the right side, on my right side, that are forcing forcing them to go inside. Once those heads change angles, you're done. If you allow the team to change their angle when they don't want to, you've already beaten that team.
So as a referee, what would you?
So
how would they manage this situation?
So when you oftentimes the very first mistake that the referee will make is they'll make this long, nice mark, and they're going to put the hookers on that mark. The problem is if both hookers are on that mark, okay, we're head on head. So like you said, you want to line to the left of that mark. So if that's the mark, my right foot is just going to be not on line with it, but to the left of it. That way we've all got our gaps. Once the hookers set their gaps, everybody else should fall into play. But too often times, as referees, we require them to be on that mark. No, that's the mark. That's where the hookers are looking at, but they want to line to the left of it. As long as they're aligning to the left of it, and that's on the setup. You can watch their feet and figure out if they're on line with it or to the left of it.
Paul.
Yes.
So for the referees that are here, how do you manage this aspect of
So what I do is, at the start of the match, I come in and put my foot like that, and I say I want your foot to be there and your right foot to be there. And if you do that, we'll be about right.
Brilliant. But yeah, if they're lining up head on head,
how about anybody else?
You just blow it up and say, listen, shift over. You can see that before it happens.
So we got Jordan. You made 2 marks?
No, Scott Green made 2 marks.
So for standardization, it's a simple act. You make a long mark in the grass. Okay? Line up to the left of the mark.
I just stand there and say, hookers to me, and I went to the shelf, and then I walk away.
So now all of a sudden they've lined to the left. Everybody should be in alignment there, but your setup is with your hooker. It's with that initial mark. Don't allow one side to take away that space.
So you're looking for a standardization of the setup here with the referee community.
Correct.
Yeah. But you don't have all the referees here, and you might get guest referees.
Well, that's why
I came in from.
That's
why we do the podcast.
So that's why
I
we're saying.
won't hold that against you.
Yeah.
There's only 20 of us out of 90.
Right. Exactly. No, for sure. But still, it has to do just with the society in general.
Good point. Good point. Paul.
I feel like this is so basic and we're beating it to shit for no reason.
So this is the first action that the referees make that's going to determine whether or not these scrums go well or not. So as long as those hookers are lined up to the left, everybody else should be lined up to the left. So go ahead and line in.
Set up to the left of it. Hold that.
Why? It's a tripod.
I wanted to get the top.
It's not filming.
Oh, is it the battery dead?
Oh no, it is filming.
Okay, crouch. Bind. Set.
No, I understand what you're saying, but what I'm...
Now, go ahead and break.
It's the shortest one yet.
The other issue with consistency, and something that we've been talking about for a while, is, from my perspective, there's going to be some shifting of feet. I know some programs, they'll shift a little bit. Some programs shift a lot. Some don't shift at all, which is ultimately what we want to see. But as a referee, you have to account for that. Before you, and one of the things that I'll tell in my pre-engagement is, I'm going to say crouch, crouch. If you got to shift your feet, I'm not going to call the next sequence until those feet become quiet. So you're going to see some adjustment. You're going to see the locks come up and get themselves. Allow that to occur. Don't rush that setup. Again, a lot of your issues come up because you're rushing it too quickly. You're rushing the players to do the next command when the first one hasn't been met. So again, get it quiet. Let those feet get quiet before you call the next sequence. The quicker they set up and the quicker they show that they're ready, that'll adjust your cadence. Some scrums are very professional. Boom, 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 we're in. Some require a little bit more movement and maneuverability. But again, allow those feet to become quiet before you call that next sequence. So let's go with an 8-man scrum. And
So
show.
that's a great point, Paul, though, because you don't want them moving, because then you're going to have problems lining up the gaps and everything.
Yeah.
And that should be number one after they line up to the left of the
Right.
mark.
It just
removes a whole set of problems.
So let's go ahead and set it up with a full scrum, and watch the feet.
Tear them up, baby.
Let's see. Try and get.
Yeah, make sure you get those feet.
That's what I'm the heck going at right now.
Crouch.
There's a bug on this.
Six. Bind.
Brace.
Set.
Squeeze. Knees. And hold.
Break.
Off.
So again, allowing those feet to quiet. You're looking more at the second rows as well. So don't miscount the second rows. Because a lot of times, particularly with high school players, they don't have the core strength to get themselves up. Some programs, again, like my program, we have the locks in the second rows, the second rows and the flankers on their knees so that they're coming up and they're already in that profile position. Some don't do that, so you have to adjust for that. But again, allowing those locks to get those feet adjusted will help a lot. It's not just the front rows that you're worried about in terms of those feet being quiet. It's the second rows. Okay. Other issues?
From this thing, or is this another setup issue?
Another setup issue.
Okay, well, this is a well-coached team. You guys set up properly, but there's a lot of times in the front rows, you guys bind up. Just do your standard bind. Just one second. You see, pull their shoulders through, they're all across. You get a lot of teams that you pull it step back a bit. The props won't be, well, they'll be further back on their setup. Because either they're badly coached or they're trying to get some sort of advantage. Part of my pre-scrum setup is I try to make the props pull their shoulder through. They try to hide it in the armpit, or they'll just be a bit further back, so the three front rows aren't even. You get, prop, hooker, then the other props back a bit. That's going to create an imbalance in the scrum, and it's going to create, problems with the setup and the hit.
Now, as I've heard referees that will tell the players, I want to see the inside shoulders. And the problem with that is that if the referee forces them to show that chest, me as a coach, I don't want my players to show their chest. I want my players to be down ready, but you've still got to be able to see that inside shoulder. And if you don't see that inside shoulder, it creates issues later on because now they're adjusting their gaps. On offensive ball, those props will tend to want to keep those shoulders in front. They want stable ball. But on defensive ball, you're going to see the props messing around, not necessarily throwing that shoulder out as a way to create